We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Fractures. Marcus Reed adjusted his tie as he walked through Romano's ornate entrance. The maitre d' recognized him immediately, offering a practiced smile. "Mr. Reed, your party is already seated. Please follow me." The restaurant buzzed with the quiet murmur of Friday night conversations, crystal glasses clinking and subtle classical music playing in the background. Marcus checked his watch, 7:05 p.m. He was 5 minutes late, something Jennifer would undoubtedly point out. As they approached the table, he could hear his wife's voice carrying over the ambient noise. She sat at the center of attention, as always, her black dress complementing her perfectly styled blonde hair. Dr. Adrian Blake sat beside her, leaning in closer than necessary as she spoke. "Marcus," Jennifer's voice carried a hint of ice as she noticed him. "How kind of you to finally join us on our anniversary." The table held their usual social circle: Tom and Sarah Wilson, the neighbors who had moved in 3 years ago, Dr. Blake and his friend Dr. Patricia Morton, and Jennifer's hospital colleagues, Michael and Lisa Chin. They all turned to look at Marcus, their expressions a mixture of amusement and discomfort. "Traffic," Marcus said simply, taking a seat. He noticed his wife had already ordered wine for the table, expensive Bordeaux that she knew he didn't particularly enjoy. "Traffic," Jennifer repeated, her laugh tinkling like broken glass. "Always an excuse. You know, Adrian was telling us about his recent trip to Paris. The medical conference there was fascinating, wasn't it?" Adrian straightened his perfectly pressed suit jacket. "Indeed. The advances in neurosurgical techniques are remarkable. The French are particularly innovative in their approach to—" "I'm sure Marcus wouldn't understand any of that," Jennifer interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "He's more comfortable with concrete and steel than medical terminology." The table shifted uncomfortably, except for Tom Wilson, who let out his characteristic barking laugh. "Hey, nothing wrong with honest work, right, Marcus?" Marcus reached for the wine glass in front of him, taking a measured sip. The sommelier approached, ready to take their orders. Jennifer jumped in before anyone else could speak. "We'll all have the chef's tasting menu," she announced. "Marcus, you don't mind, do you? It's only $500 per person." The table murmured in appreciation, but Marcus noticed Dr. Morton's slight frown. She had worked with him on several hospital construction projects and knew his actual capabilities. "That's fine," Marcus replied, his voice level. He watched as Adrian's hand briefly touched Jennifer's arm, a gesture that might seem innocent to others, but Marcus had spent the last 3 months cataloging such moments. The first course arrived, an artfully plated arrangement of scallops. Jennifer launched into another story about hospital life, her wine glass never seeming to empty. "You should have seen this homeless man who came in today," she said, giggling. "He tried to tell me he used to be a business executive. Can you imagine? At least his stories were entertaining, unlike some people who just work and brood all day." Her eyes fixed pointedly on Marcus. The table had grown quieter, the atmosphere tense despite the flowing wine. "Jennifer," Dr. Morton started, "perhaps we should—" No, it's true." Jennifer's voice had grown louder. "Even homeless people have more worth than you, Marcus. At least they have interesting stories to tell. What do you have? Blueprints and dirt under your fingernails?" Tom Wilson's laugh cut through the silence that followed, Sarah's higher-pitched giggle joining in nervously. Adrian Blake maintained his composed smile, but his eyes showed calculation as he watched Marcus's reaction. Marcus placed his napkin carefully on the table and stood up. Without a word, he reached into his wallet and pulled out several $100 bills, dropping them beside his barely touched plate. "Marcus, don't be so dramatic," Jennifer called after him as he walked away. "This is exactly what I mean. No social graces at all." The laughter followed him out into the night, but Marcus didn't hurry his steps. He had known this moment was coming. 3 months of watching Jennifer's late-night texts, observing her lingering touches with Adrian at hospital functions, noting the increasing disdain in her voice. It had all led to this. Marcus got into his truck, not the luxury vehicle Jennifer had begged him to buy, but the well-maintained Ford he used for site visits. He pulled out his phone and opened a video file sent by his private investigator earlier that day. Jennifer and Adrian entering a hotel at lunch, emerging 2 hours later. He closed the file and made a call. Diana? It's Marcus Reed. I'd like to meet tomorrow, if possible. I have a proposition for you. The next morning, his phone buzzed with Jennifer's text, staying at Sarah's. Need time to think. Marcus checked Sarah Wilson's Facebook page, where she had posted pictures of her family at Disney World just hours ago. He saved screenshots of both the text and the social media posts, adding them to his growing collection of evidence. In his home office, Marcus opened his laptop and began typing. The first email went to his lawyer, requesting a meeting. The second went to Mike Dawson, an old friend who had become a successful real estate developer. The third was to his bank, initiating the process of securing his assets. He heard the front door open and close, Jennifer collecting some of her things, no doubt. Marcus didn't leave his office. He could hear her heels clicking on the floor, moving from room to room. Finally, the steps approached his office door. I'm taking some clothes, Jennifer announced without opening the door. I need space to figure things out. Of course, Marcus replied, his voice neutral. Take what you need. A pause, then. That's it? No questions? No fighting. Would you like there to be? Another pause. This is exactly what I mean. No passion, no emotion. Just nothing. The heels clicked away, and shortly after, the front door closed again. Marcus turned back to his laptop, opening a new document. At the top, he typed, Phase 1, Documentation. Below that, he began listing names, dates, and connections, starting with Dr. Adrian Blake. The printer hummed as it produced copies of bank statements, text messages, and surveillance photos. Marcus organized them in a folder, alongside Diana Reynolds' business card. As he worked, he could hear Jennifer's mocking voice in his mind. Even homeless people have more worth than you. He opened a browser and searched for Memorial Hospital expansion plans. The results included several articles about proposed development in the surrounding areas. Marcus noted the locations mentioned, then opened another document to begin mapping property ownership in those zones. His phone buzzed again, Mike Dawson responding to his email. Meet for lunch? Lots to discuss about those properties you mentioned. Marcus typed a quick affirmative response, then leaned back in his chair. The morning sun illuminated the room, highlighting the space where Jennifer's photos used to hang on the wall. She had been removing them gradually over the past few months, replacing them with abstract art that Adrian had recommended. He reached for his phone one more time, scrolling through his contacts until he found the number for Memorial Hospital's charitable giving office. It was time to begin the next phase of his plan. Chapter 2. The Architect. Diana Reynolds sat across from Marcus at the small coffee shop, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of his appearance. She stirred her Americano slowly, considering his words. You want me to investigate my ex-husband? She asked, her tone professional despite the personal connection. That's an interesting proposition, Mr. Reed. Marcus took a sip of his black coffee. I want to understand him better. Your unique insight would be valuable. Diana's lips curved slightly. Adrian Blake, the prestigious neurosurgeon. Did you know he was a resident when we met? Back then, he drove a beaten-up Honda and wore discount suits. Tell me about his transformation, Marcus prompted, noting how Diana's fingers tightened around her cup. Adrian has a god complex, she said, leaning forward. It didn't start that way. At first, he was driven, brilliant, dedicated to his patients. But success changed him. Each successful surgery fed his ego until he began believing he was untouchable. Marcus nodded, remembering how Adrian had looked at Jennifer during hospital functions, as if he had every right to take what he wanted. The problem with believing you're untouchable, Diana continued, is that it makes you sloppy. Adrian keeps meticulous medical records, but his personal life? She shook her head. That's where he makes mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Diana pulled out a small notebook. Let's start with his gambling. He thinks he's clever, using offshore betting sites and cryptocurrency. But he's not as tech-savvy as he believes. Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone buzzing. A notification showed Jennifer had posted on social media a photo of her at a charity gala, Adrian standing close behind her. The caption read, "Supporting Memorial Hospital's finest with wonderful colleagues." Ah, Diana said, glimpsing the photo. The public debut. Right on schedule. You don't seem surprised, Marcus observed. Adrian follows patterns. He did the same with me, then with his second wife. The affair starts secretly. Then he encourages the woman to be bold, to flaunt it. It feeds his ego to take another man's wife openly. Marcus saved the photo to his evidence folder. Tell me about the hospital politics. Diana's expression sharpened. That's where it gets interesting. Adrian's position as chief of neurosurgery gives him access to confidential information about hospital expansion plans. He's been using that information for private land deals. Illegal? Not technically, but definitely unethical, especially if the hospital board found out. She paused, studying Marcus's reaction. You already knew about this, didn't you? Marcus smiled slightly. I may have heard rumors. My friend Mike Dawson and I have been looking into property investments around the hospital. Clever, Diana approved. But there's more to Adrian's story. The gambling debts are significant, and he's been making some questionable medical decisions to increase his income. Harming patients? No, he's too smart for that. But performing surgeries that might have been handled with less invasive procedures? Recommending expensive treatments when simpler options exist? The pattern is there if you know where to look. Marcus made a note in his phone. I'd like to hire you officially, Ms. Reynolds. Your firm specializes in medical malpractice cases, correct? Indeed. Though I assume you're more interested in our investigative capabilities than litigation. For now, I want to understand everything about Adrian Blake's world. His habits, his weaknesses, his associates. And Jennifer's role in all of it. Diana pulled out a contract from her briefcase. Standard agreement. My usual rate is double it, Marcus interrupted. I want this to be your priority. As Diana prepared the paperwork, Marcus's phone buzzed again. A text from Tom Wilson. Hey man, heard about you and Jennifer. Rough break. If you need to talk. Marcus remembered Tom's distinctive laugh at Romano's, how he had joined in Jennifer's mockery without hesitation. He saved the text without responding. Your wife, Diana said, following his gaze to the phone. She's been spreading her version of events at the hospital. Oh yes, I'm the brutish, neglectful husband who couldn't keep up with her intellectual needs. The successful but simple construction worker who held her back from greater things. Diana's laugh was sharp. If they only knew. I did my homework before this meeting, Mr. Reed. MIT graduate in architectural engineering, patents on several innovative construction techniques. Self-made millionaire by 30. You're hardly simple. Jennifer never cared about those details. She preferred the narrative of marrying beneath her and suffering through it nobly. And now she's taken half our liquid assets and moved into a luxury apartment. Adrian has been introducing her to his social circle, taking her to medical conferences, molding her into his ideal partner. Diana signed the contract and slid it across the table. You know this won't end well for them. Adrian will grow bored once the chase is over. He always does. I'm counting on it, Marcus said, adding his signature to the document. But by then, everything will be in place. You're playing a long game, Diana observed. Most clients want immediate revenge. Marcus stood, gathering his documents. Revenge is temporary. I'm interested in something more permanent. One more thing, Diana called as he turned to leave. Adrian has some interesting connections in the gambling world. People who aren't as sophisticated as he pretends to be. Would you like me to look into that as well? Marcus nodded. Everything. Leave no stone unturned. As he walked to his truck, Marcus's phone buzzed with notifications. Jennifer had tagged him in a social media post. Photos from their marriage with a long, sympathetic message about growing apart and finding oneself. The comments were filling with supportive messages from their social circle. Marcus forwarded the post to Diana, then called Mike Dawson. Mike, how quickly can we move on those properties near Memorial Hospital? Fast if we use shell companies, Mike replied. But it'll take serious capital. I'll wire the funds today. And Mike, make sure our homeless outreach program is running smoothly. I want to expand it significantly over the next few months. Marcus ended the call and drove to his office. The construction company he had built from nothing occupied 3 floors of a downtown building. His employees nodded respectfully as he passed, their loyalty earned through years of fair treatment and profit sharing. In his office, Marcus opened his safe and removed a recording device. He had installed similar devices in his home before moving out, all legally documented as security measures. Jennifer's dinner parties with Adrian would be interesting to monitor. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed? There's a reporter from the local Times asking about your homeless employment initiative. Would you like to speak with them?" Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Yes, send them up." "And Sarah?" "Schedule a meeting with Memorial Hospital's board next week. I'd like to discuss a potential donation." He turned to his window, overlooking the city he had helped build. Somewhere out there, Jennifer and Adrian were celebrating their public debut, believing they had humiliated him completely. They had no idea they were merely setting the stage for their own downfall. Chapter 3. Foundation Work. The homeless shelter near Memorial Hospital buzzed with activity as Marcus walked through its doors. 3 months had passed since the night at Romano's, and he had become a familiar face here. The shelter's director, Grace Martinez, greeted him warmly. "Marcus, perfect timing. We just got a new group in from the winter program." He followed her through the common area, noting how different it looked since his donation had funded renovations. New paint, clean furniture, and most importantly, a computer lab for job training. "Mr. Reed," a voice called out. James Cooper, formerly homeless and now employed as a foreman at one of Marcus's construction sites, approached with a clipboard. The latest progress report on the training program. Marcus took the clipboard, scanning the numbers. 23 people placed in jobs this month, 15 in construction, 8 in other industries. All part of his expanding network of eyes and ears around the hospital. "Good work, James. How's the special project coming along?" James lowered his voice. 3 of our guys work in hospital maintenance now. They've noticed Dr. Blake's patterns, just like you asked. Always arrives at 7:15 a.m., takes lunch at 1:30 p.m., usually with Mrs. Reed. They often leave together in his car, return separately about 2 hours later. Marcus nodded, adding the information to his mental database. Diana's investigation had already confirmed the affair's regularity, but multiple sources of evidence were crucial. "There's more," James continued. "One of our people overheard Dr. Blake arguing on the phone in the parking garage. Something about payments and deadlines. Sounded serious. Interesting. Keep monitoring but maintain distance." No direct interaction. Marcus moved through the shelter, greeting people by name, listening to their stories. Each conversation was an investment in his growing network. These people, whom Jennifer had mockingly compared him to, were becoming his most valuable allies. His phone vibrated, a text from Diana, "Meeting in 20 minutes? New information about AB's gambling activities." He found her in their usual coffee shop, a thick folder on the table between them. "Adrian's getting desperate," Diana reported, spreading out documents. "He's borrowed money from some particularly unsavory characters. One group has connections to a casino in Atlantic City." Marcus studied the papers. "Can these debts be purchased?" "Already done," Diana smiled. "Through various intermediaries, I've acquired control of his most pressing debts. He doesn't know it yet, but you're now his primary creditor." Marcus absorbed this information, considering the implications. "And the hospital records?" Diana pulled out another set of documents. "Your suspicions were correct. Adrian's been performing surgeries that could have been handled with less invasive procedures. Nothing directly harmful, but definitely questionable from an ethical standpoint. Evidence? Statistical analysis shows his surgical intervention rate is 40% higher than his peers for similar cases. He's also billing for maximum complexity on procedures that other surgeons classify as routine." Marcus added the papers to his growing file. "And Jennifer? She's been covering his tracks, adjusting nursing notes to support his decisions. Nothing overtly illegal, but it shows a pattern of complicity." Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone, another social media notification. Jennifer had posted photos from a dinner party at her new apartment. The same friends who had laughed at Marcus that night at Romano's were there, raising glasses in theatrical poses. "They're getting bolder," Diana observed. "Good," Marcus replied, saving screenshots. "The more public they are, the better." He left the coffee shop and drove to his home, now emptier since Jennifer had moved out. The hidden cameras he'd installed captured her periodic visits to collect more belongings, often accompanied by Adrian. Their conversations, filled with mockery about Marcus's simple nature, were all carefully recorded and archived. In his office, Marcus checked his email. Several messages from shelter residents now working at the hospital provided updates on Jennifer and Adrian's movements. One caught his attention, a detailed account of Adrian taking a heated phone call in the stairwell, arguing about payment terms. The surveillance cameras in the house had captured Jennifer's latest visit yesterday. Marcus played back the footage. "I can't believe I wasted years with him." Jennifer's voice dripped with disdain as she packed clothes into expensive suitcases. Adrian stood in the doorway, looking smugly around the bedroom. "Darling, you've upgraded in every way," Adrian replied. Although I must admit, his financial planning was adequate. The settlement should be quite comfortable. Jennifer laughed. That same mocking sound from Romanos. He always was good with numbers. It's the only thing he had going for him. No sophistication, no social graces. Marcus stopped the playback and added the file to his evidence collection. He opened his laptop and checked the property acquisitions around Memorial Hospital, all proceeding through carefully structured shell companies, untraceable to him or Mike. A text arrived from Grace at the shelter. 3 more success stories ready for interviews. Local media very interested in the program. Marcus smiled slightly. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Jennifer's cruel comparison to homeless people was becoming the foundation of her own undoing. His phone rang, Mike Dawson calling with an update. "Marcus, you won't believe what I just heard," Mike said without preamble. Adrian's been approaching investors about private land deals around the hospital, using his inside knowledge of the expansion plans. "Let him," Marcus replied. "In fact, make sure some of our shell companies seem interested. The more commitments he makes, the better. You're sure about this? It's a lot of money in play." "I'm sure." "How's the community outreach program coming along?" "Better than expected. Those guys from the shelter are really stepping up. 2 of them are ready for management training." Marcus ended the call and reviewed his timeline. Phase 1 was nearly complete. Documentation gathered, networks established, pieces positioned. Jennifer and Adrian were riding high on their perceived victory, unaware of the foundation crumbling beneath them. His phone buzzed with another text from Diana. "AB just made large bet through offshore site. Getting reckless. Want details?" "Everything," Marcus replied. "Keep tracking." He stood at his window, watching the city lights come on as evening fell. In a high-rise apartment across town, Jennifer was probably hosting another dinner party, entertaining their former friends with stories of her liberation from her unsophisticated husband. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Every joke, every snide comment, every public display of disdain was another brick in the wall that would eventually surround them. Marcus's phone buzzed one final time for the evening, a message from Tom Wilson. "Hey man, here's the video from Jennifer's dinner party last night. Thought you should see what they're saying about you." "Not cool." Marcus watched the video, recognizing the familiar faces around Jennifer's new dining table. The same people who had laughed at Romano's were there, wine glasses in hand, listening to Jennifer and Adrian mock his working-class background, his lack of medical knowledge, his simple ways. He saved the video to his evidence folder and sent a brief thanks to Tom. Another piece of the puzzle, freely offered by someone too shallow to realize they were helping to seal their own fate. Marcus closed his laptop and secured his files. Phase 1 was complete. The foundation had been laid, the structure designed, and the materials gathered. Soon, it would be time to begin construction. But for now, he would wait. After all, he had learned patience from years of building complex projects. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither would his revenge be. In the quiet of his office, Marcus allowed himself a moment of reflection. Jennifer's words from that night at Romano's echoed in his mind. "Even homeless people have more worth than you." If she only knew how prophetic those words would prove to be. Chapter 4. Breaking Ground. The Memorial Hospital board room buzzed with whispers as Marcus Reed stepped up to the podium. Board members leaned forward in their leather chairs, their attention fixed on the construction mogul they'd previously overlooked at social functions. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice steady and measured. "I stand before you today with a proposition. Memorial Hospital has served this community for decades. Now, it's time to expand that service. Dr. Adrian Blake shifted in his seat, his perfectly pressed suit failing to hide his discomfort. Jennifer sat 3 rows behind him, her manicured nails drumming against her handbag. "I am pledging $5 million, Marcus continued, for a new neurology wing. The whispers grew louder. Adrian's face remained carefully neutral, but his hand tightened on his pen. However, Marcus held up a finger. "I have one condition. The donor committee overseeing this project must include community representatives, people who understand the real needs of our city's most vulnerable populations." Board Chairman Douglas Matthews cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, while we appreciate your generous offer, the committee traditionally consists of medical professionals and—" "Times change, Dr. Matthews," Marcus interrupted smoothly. "I'd like to introduce you to some of my nominees." The door opened and 5 people entered. James Cooper led the group, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than Adrian's. Behind him came Maria Rodriguez, Sarah Chun, David Williams, and Robert Turner, all former homeless individuals who now ran successful businesses through Marcus's program. Jennifer's face paled as she recognized Robert, the same man she had mockingly compared to Marcus at Romano's months ago. Now he stood before the board as the owner of a thriving construction supply company. These individuals, Marcus gestured to his nominees, have firsthand experience with healthcare accessibility challenges. Their insight would be invaluable to the project. James stepped forward, his confidence evident in his stance. "6 months ago, I was sleeping in my car. Today, I employ 30 people and provide health insurance to all of them. That transformation was possible because someone looked past surface appearances and saw potential." The board members exchanged glances. Chairman Matthews studied the group with growing interest. "Perhaps it's time for a fresh perspective. Mr. Reed, could your nominees present their qualifications in detail?" For the next hour, Marcus watched as his carefully selected team commanded the room's attention. Maria discussed healthcare barriers for non-English speakers. Sarah presented statistics on preventable conditions among the homeless population. David outlined job training programs that could support hospital staffing needs. Adrian attempted to interject several times, but his concerns about maintaining professional standards fell flat against the nominees' practical expertise. After the meeting, Marcus stood in the hallway as reporters gathered. Local news crews had been tipped off about the donation, another piece of his carefully orchestrated plan. "Mr. Reed," a reporter called out, "what inspired this generous donation?" Marcus stepped up to the microphones, aware of Jennifer and Adrian watching from the periphery. "I believe everyone has worth, regardless of their circumstances. Sometimes, people just need an opportunity to prove it." The cameras flashed as James and the other nominees joined him. The story wrote itself. Successful businessman giving back, helping others rise from poverty, believing in second chances. Each headline would be a subtle reminder of Jennifer's cruel mockery. Later that evening, Diana Reynolds met Marcus at their usual coffee shop. "The news coverage is excellent," she reported, sliding a tablet across the table. "But that's not all. Adrian's been making some interesting moves." Marcus scanned the documents on the screen. Bank transfers, loan applications, desperate attempts to maintain appearances as his gambling debts mounted. "He's borrowed from the Castellano family," Diana continued, lowering her voice. "Not the kind of people you want to owe money to. Have they been receptive to our offers?" Diana nodded. "Very. By this time next week, you'll own all of Adrian's markers. He just doesn't know it yet." Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Mike Dawson. "Hospital expansion plans proceeding exactly as predicted. Our properties are perfectly positioned." Another message followed, this one from James. "Dr. Blake spotted arguing with someone in the parking garage. Looked heated. We got it on security cameras." The pieces were falling into place. Marcus opened his laptop and began drafting his speech for the donation ceremony. It would be a masterpiece of subtle implications, each word carefully chosen to remind Jennifer and Adrian of their past mockery, while presenting himself as the embodiment of generosity. "The ceremony is next week," Diana noted. "Jennifer and Adrian will have to attend." "Hospital protocol." "Perfect," Marcus replied. "Make sure our friends from the shelter are dressed their best. I want them to outshine everyone else in the room." As they finished their meeting, Marcus's phone displayed another notification. Jennifer had posted on social media again. So proud of Memorial Hospital's upcoming expansion. Some people understand true sophistication and class. Marcus forwarded the post to his legal team. More evidence of her continued attempts to demean him publicly. Each post, each snide comment, each attempt at sophistication was another brick in the wall he was building around them. The construction had begun, and the foundation was solid. Chapter 5. Structural Integrity. The Memorial Hospital expansion plans leaked to the press on a Tuesday morning. Marcus sat in his office, watching the chaos unfold through various channels. Local news websites blazed with headlines about insider trading and ethical violations. Social media erupted with speculation about who had profited from advanced knowledge of the development zones. Dr. Blake, the Channel 7 reporter's voice played from Marcus's computer. Do you have any comment on allegations that you used insider information for private land investments? The footage showed Adrian attempting to maintain his composure as he pushed through a crowd of reporters. His perfectly pressed suit looked rumpled, his polished facade showing cracks. Mike Dawson called just as Marcus finished watching the clip. You should see the land values now. Our properties have tripled in price, while Adrian's investments are worthless. He bought in all the wrong locations. How unfortunate, Marcus replied, allowing himself a small smile. Have our shell companies received any interesting offers? Several, including one from Jennifer Reed. Seems she's trying to help Adrian recover his losses. Marcus opened his email to find a message from Jennifer herself. The timestamp showed 3 a.m., late night desperation seeping through her usually careful image. Marcus, I know we've had our differences, but I need to talk to you. It's important. Please. He let the message sit unanswered as he reviewed updates from his network. James reported that Adrian had been seen taking long walks through the hospital parking garage, having intense phone conversations. The homeless-turned-employees in maintenance confirmed the doctor's increasing agitation. At precisely 2:15 p.m., Jennifer appeared at his office. Her outfit couldn't hide her anxiety as she paced before his desk. Marcus, I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, her practice speech already sounding hollow. I may have been hasty in my decisions. The things I said, I was unfair to you. Marcus gestured to a chair, his face neutral. What brought about this revelation? I've gained perspective, realized what really matters. She twisted her hands in her lap. Maybe we could try again? Start fresh. Interesting timing, Marcus noted, pulling up some documents on his computer. Would this have anything to do with Adrian's current situation? Jennifer's facade cracked slightly. That's not. I mean, yes, Adrian has had some setbacks, but this is about us. About us, Marcus repeated. Like that night at Romano's? When you compared me to homeless people? I was drunk, Marcus. I didn't mean, but you did mean it. Just like you meant it at all those dinner parties you've been hosting. The ones where you mock my background, my work, my supposed lack of sophistication. Color drained from Jennifer's face. How did you know about those? The same way I know about Adrian's gambling debts. The same way I know about your attempts to help him with land deals. Marcus leaned forward. I may be just a simple construction worker, but I pay attention. Marcus, please. If you could just help with the property investments. Adrian is in trouble with some dangerous people. Is he? How unfortunate. Marcus checked his watch. I have a dinner reservation at Romano's tonight. Would you like to join me? Jennifer blinked, thrown by the sudden change in topic. Romano's? But I've invited some special guests. People you might remember comparing me to. Understanding dawned in Jennifer's eyes. The homeless people. They work for you now. Not for me. With me. They own their own businesses, make their own decisions. Marcus stood. Dinner is at 8. Your old table is reserved. That evening, Romano's hummed with energy as Marcus's guests arrived. James Cooper in his Italian suit, Maria Rodriguez in elegant wear, each of his successful program graduates dressed to perfection. The same waitstaff who had served Jennifer's mocking dinner months ago now fawned over the new arrivals. Jennifer sat stiffly in her chair, watching as these people she had once dismissed discussed business strategies, investment portfolios, and philanthropic initiatives. Their sophistication and intelligence stood in stark contrast to her previous cruel judgments. Marcus. Tom Wilson approached their table, his usual barking laugh notably absent. "Impressive group you've assembled here." "Indeed," Marcus replied. "Would you like to hear some of their stories? They're quite interesting." Jennifer's attempt to mock him again died on her lips as she realized what he had done. Her words from that fateful night had become her undoing. The evening ended with Marcus's guests sharing their success stories, each one a pointed reminder of Jennifer's previous disdain. As she left the restaurant, her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. "Everything's falling apart. Need to talk now." Marcus watched her hurry away, then turned to Diana, who had been observing from a nearby table. "How close are we?" "Very," she replied. "Adrian's creditors are getting impatient. And now that you own his debts." "Perfect. Time for Phase 3. Chapter 6. Load-Bearing Walls." The pressure began mounting on multiple fronts. Adrian's gambling debts, now owned by Marcus through various shell companies, came due with crushing precision. Each demand for payment pushed the doctor closer to the edge, his perfect facade cracking under the strain. In the hospital boardroom, Marcus's reformed homeless friends, now respected business owners, raised concerns about Adrian's medical practices. The discussion was professional, measured, and devastating. Dr. Blake's surgical intervention rate is significantly higher than the department average. James Cooper presented the statistics with calm authority. "Our analysis suggests a pattern of choosing more expensive procedures when less invasive options were available." The board members listened intently as Maria Rodriguez added details about patient complaints and questionable billing practices. Adrian sat rigid in his chair, his usual confident smile replaced by barely controlled panic. Jennifer watched from her position among the hospital staff, her own reputation beginning to unravel. Nurses had started requesting transfers from her supervision, uncomfortable with her documented history of cruel behavior. "Mrs. Reed," a patient had said just that morning, "I've heard some disturbing things about your comments regarding less fortunate people. I'd prefer a different nurse." The recordings of her mockery at dinner parties had somehow reached hospital staff. Each day brought new whispers, sidelong glances, and canceled lunch invitations. Adrian's stress began affecting his work. In surgery, his usually steady hands trembled slightly. During consultations, his recommendations became erratic, desperate attempts to maximize billing rather than prioritize patient care. "Dr. Blake," Chairman Matthews called him in one afternoon, "we've noticed some concerning patterns in your recent cases." The meeting lasted 3 hours. Adrian emerged looking shaken, his perfectly pressed suit wrinkled from nervous fidgeting. Jennifer found him in the parking garage, pacing between luxury cars he could no longer afford. "Adrian, what's happening?" "The board. It's all falling apart," he snapped, running hands through his immaculate hair. "The debts, the investments, now this investigation. Someone's orchestrating it all." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. The property deal's failing, the creditors suddenly demanding payment. These homeless people we laughed at now, sitting on the hospital board." He grabbed her shoulders. "Don't you see? It's him. It's all him." Jennifer stepped back, remembering Marcus's calm demeanor at Romano's, watching his transformed homeless friends demonstrate their success. "No, he's not that sophisticated. He couldn't." "Wake up, Jennifer. Your simple husband is destroying us piece by piece. And you." Adrian's voice turned ugly. "You had to push him that night, didn't you? Had to show off how clever you were, mocking him in front of everyone." Their argument echoed through the parking garage, witnessed by maintenance workers who would later report every detail to Marcus. The pressure continued mounting. Adrian began missing payments on his luxury car, his country club membership, his vacation property. Each missed payment triggered penalties that seemed designed to maximize his financial distress. Jennifer discovered her own assets were depleted. The money she'd taken in the separation spent on failed attempts to help Adrian recover his losses. Her sophisticated friends began declining her invitations, sensing the approaching storm. The breaking point came during a charity gala at the hospital. Adrian, desperate to maintain appearances, attempted to bid on auction items he couldn't afford. Jennifer watched in horror as he committed to donations far beyond his means. "Adrian, stop," she hissed, grabbing his arm. We can't afford this. Image is everything, he replied, his composure slipping. We have to show them we're still in control. Across the room, Marcus chatted with hospital board members, his successful protégés moving confidently through the crowd. The contrast between their genuine success and Adrian's crumbling facade was stark. Later that night, Jennifer overheard nurses discussing her situation. Can you believe she mocked homeless people? And now look, her boyfriend's facing an ethics investigation, and she's being reviewed for complicity. The walls were closing in, each carefully placed piece of Marcus's plan adding pressure from a different direction. Adrian's perfect world was crumbling, and Jennifer's sophisticated facade was cracking under the strain. Their relationship began to show signs of stress. Arguments erupted over money, over reputation, over who was to blame for their mounting problems. The perfect affair that had seemed so triumphant at Romano's now tarnished in the harsh light of reality. Marcus observed it all through his network of transformed allies, each piece of information confirming that his plan was working exactly as designed. The construction was nearly complete. Now it was time for the final phase. Chapter 7. Final Inspection. The Memorial Hospital boardroom had never felt so tense. Board members sat rigid in their chairs, papers spread before them detailing the extent of Dr. Adrian Blake's ethical violations. The distinguished neurosurgeon himself sat at one end of the long table, his usual polished appearance marred by signs of strain, wrinkled suit, loosened tie, dark circles under his eyes. Chairman Matthews cleared his throat. Dr. Blake, these findings are deeply troubling. Our audit shows a clear pattern of unnecessary surgical interventions. With all due respect, Adrian's voice cracked slightly. These are complex medical decisions. Not easily understood by whom, Dr. Blake? James Cooper interrupted from his seat on the board. By those of us who lack your sophistication? Adrian's jaw tightened at the pointed reference. The former homeless man now sat in judgment of him, impeccably dressed and wielding real power. The numbers speak for themselves, Maria Rodriguez added, sliding forward a detailed analysis. Your surgical intervention rate is 40% higher than the department average, predominantly in cases where less invasive options were available. And the billing patterns, David Williams continued, consistently maximized insurance payments through questionable procedure classifications. Jennifer sat in the witness chair, watching her lover's carefully constructed world crumble. Her own position was precarious, called to testify about her knowledge of Adrian's practices. Mrs. Reed, Chairman Matthews turned to her. When did you become aware of Dr. Blake's unauthorized surgical decisions? Jennifer straightened, attempting to project her usual confidence. I wasn't aware. Dr. Blake's decisions seemed reasonable given his expertise. Really? Matthews pressed a button on his laptop. A recording filled the room. Jennifer's voice at one of their dinner parties. Adrian's brilliant at finding ways to maximize billing. These rich patients can afford it, and insurance covers the rest. Color drained from Jennifer's face as she recognized the recording from Marcus's hidden cameras. That was taken out of context. We have more, Matthews continued. Another recording played, Jennifer and Adrian discussing specific cases, planning which patients could be convinced to undergo more expensive procedures. I was just following Dr. Blake's lead, Jennifer protested. He assured me everything was proper. Adrian's head snapped up. You knew exactly what we were doing. You helped coordinate the scheduling to avoid peer review. The boardroom erupted in murmurs as the former lovers turned on each other. Chairman Matthews raised his hand for silence. Dr. Blake, your surgical privileges are suspended pending further investigation. Mrs. Reed, the nursing board will be notified of your involvement. Adrian stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. This is ridiculous. I'm one of the top neurosurgeons in the country. You can't. Sit down, Dr. Blake, Matthews commanded. We're not finished. There's still the matter of your financial improprieties. The next hour was brutal. Evidence mounted, gambling debts, failed land deals, desperate attempts to cover mounting losses. Adrian's perfect facade cracked completely. My methods were aggressive but effective, he insisted, sweat beading on his forehead. No patients were harmed. No physical harm, James corrected. But unnecessary surgeries carry risks and the financial impact on families. What would you know about it? Adrian snapped. You were living on the streets a year ago. The room fell silent. Adrian realized too late how his mask had slipped, revealing the same contempt that had amused him at Romano's that fateful night. Jennifer watched in horror as her sophisticated world collapsed. Her own recordings continued to play, mocking comments about patients, cruel jokes about staff members, disdain for those she considered beneath her. Later that evening, Adrian's meltdown at Romano's became public spectacle. The same restaurant where he had laughed at Marcus now witnessed his complete unraveling. You don't understand, he shouted at his creditor's representatives. I'm Dr. Adrian Blake. I save lives. I'm not some common debtor. Jennifer slipped out during his tirade, her phone buzzing with notifications. Anonymous complaints had been filed against her nursing license. Detailed documentation of unprofessional behavior, ethical violations, and patient complaints. In his office across town, Marcus watched the events unfold through his network of allies. Diana Reynolds sat across from him, reviewing reports. The board's decision was unanimous, she informed him. Adrian's suspension is just the beginning. The Medical Ethics Board is opening a full investigation. Marcus nodded, closing a folder containing Jennifer's nursing board complaints. And the creditors? Moving in as planned. The Castellano family is particularly eager to collect. Through the hospital grapevine, Jennifer learned her fate. Patients were requesting transfers, uncomfortable with her documented history of mockery and disdain. Her sophisticated friends stopped returning calls, sensing the approaching storm. The price of cruelty was coming due, and payment would be extracted in full. Chapter 8. Certificate of Occupancy. Marcus's new hospital program launched with extensive media coverage. Local news cameras captured reformed homeless individuals entering job training programs, receiving medical care, and rebuilding their lives. This initiative, Marcus explained to reporters, proves that worth isn't determined by current circumstances, but by character and potential. The same social circle that had laughed at his simple nature now watched as he was celebrated in the press. Tom Wilson approached him at a charity event, his usual barking laugh replaced by nervous deference. Marcus, about that night at Romano's, I feel terrible about. No need to explain, Tom. Marcus cut him off smoothly. Actions speak louder than words. Adrian's situation deteriorated rapidly. His assets were seized one by one, the luxury car, the country club membership, the vacation properties. Each loss stripped away another layer of his sophisticated facade. The final blow came in the form of an email, sent in desperation to Jennifer. This is all your fault. You need to show off, to mock him publicly. You pushed too far. I'm leaving the country. Don't try to contact me. The email somehow reached the entire hospital staff within hours. Jennifer's humiliation was complete as colleagues read Adrian's bitter accusations. In her apartment, Jennifer sorted through clothes and accessories, preparing for a sale. Legal fees had drained her resources, and her nursing license suspension left few options. A knock at her door revealed a process server. Mrs. Reed? Notice of civil action regarding patient billing fraud. The papers detailed her complicity in Adrian's schemes, supported by her own recorded statements. Her sophisticated world had crumbled to dust. Meanwhile, Marcus's program expanded. The homeless shelter where he had started his network was transformed into a comprehensive support center. Job training, medical care, and housing assistance operated seamlessly under the guidance of his reformed allies. Adrian's flight from justice made headlines. Disgraced surgeon flees country. His last known transaction was a hastily purchased plane ticket to Mexico. Jennifer watched the news from her new apartment, a small unit in the same neighborhood she had once mocked Marcus for coming from. The irony wasn't lost on her as she prepared for her first shift as a waitress. The hospital board meeting that followed Adrian's flight focused on the future. Marcus's donation had created lasting change, his vision of community involvement reshaping hospital policies. Mr. Reed, Chairman Matthews addressed him. Your investment in people others overlooked has transformed this institution. James Cooper, now head of the Community Advisory Board, presented the latest statistics. Employment rates up 60%, medical care accessibility improved, community trust restored. Each success was another brick in the foundation of Marcus's triumph, built from the very mockery Jennifer had intended to destroy him with. Chapter 9. The Penthouse View. 1 year after the fateful dinner at Romano's, Marcus stood at the podium in Memorial Hospital's new neurology wing. The opening gala drew the city's elite, eager to associate with the philanthropist who had transformed healthcare accessibility. Through the diner window across the street, Jennifer watched while arranging coffee cups. Her waitress uniform was a far cry from her former wardrobe. "More coffee, table 6, her manager called out. As Jennifer moved between tables, she overheard hospital staff discussing the latest news. "Did you hear? They found Dr. Blake in Mexico, working at some small clinic under a false name." "Really? What happened?" "Anonymous tip to authorities. He's being extradited to face charges." Jennifer's hand trembled slightly as she poured coffee. Another conversation caught her attention. Marcus Reed's engagement to Diana Reynolds. Now that's a power couple. She's brilliant. That investigation she led into medical malpractice changed everything, and to think some people used to mock him as just a construction worker. The diner's front window provided a clear view as Marcus's Tesla pulled up to the hospital. He emerged looking impeccable in a tailored suit, helping an elderly homeless veteran from the passenger seat. "That's what real class looks like," one of Jennifer's customers commented. "Not just money or status, but how you treat others." Jennifer watched as Marcus guided the veteran toward the hospital's job training center. Their eyes met briefly through the window, his calm and knowing, hers haunted by recognition of her own downfall. Marcus's small smile held no malice, just quiet acknowledgement of debts paid and lessons learned. Then he turned away, focused on helping another person rebuild their life. The veteran's voice carried through the diner's open door. "Mr. Reed, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. Everyone deserves a chance to prove their worth." Marcus replied, the words carrying clearly to where Jennifer stood frozen. Her own words from that night at Romano's echoed in her mind. "Even homeless people have more worth than you." She had been right, but not in the way she'd intended. Marcus had transformed her cruel mockery into his greatest triumph, proving that true worth lay in actions rather than appearances. As Marcus disappeared into the hospital, Jennifer returned to her tables, serving coffee to the same social circle that had once laughed at her jokes about Marcus's simple nature. The price of mockery had indeed been paid in full, not through violence or direct confrontation, but through the systematic dismantling of false sophistication and the triumph of genuine character. Marcus had won, but his victory wasn't in Jennifer's downfall or Adrian's disgrace. It was in the lives he'd transformed, the community he'd built, and the lasting change he'd created from the very insults meant to diminish him. The last coffee cup of her shift emptied. Jennifer watched Marcus's Tesla pull away from the hospital. In the passenger seat sat Diana Reynolds, their engagement making headlines in the local press. The same social circle that had once mocked Marcus now celebrated his union with the accomplished investigator who had helped expose Adrian's misdeeds. Jennifer picked up her tips, coins, and small bills left by former friends who now looked through her rather than at her. The price of cruelty had been extracted not in revenge, but in justice served through success and transformation. Marcus's final victory was complete, built not on destruction, but on construction, of opportunities, of dignity, of real worth proven through actions rather than words. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Memorial Hospital's annual charity gala had become the city's premier social event. In the grand ballroom of the Reed Community Center, a newly constructed building adjacent to the hospital, Marcus Reed stood at the podium, his wife Diana beside him, addressing the gathered crowd. 5 years ago, we began a journey together, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the space. What started as a single donation has grown into something far beyond our initial vision. The audience included faces both familiar and new. James Cooper, now the hospital's director of community programs, sat at a prominent table with his wife and children. Maria Rodriguez, having completed her MBA, ran the hospital's innovative patient advocacy department. The other former homeless individuals who had been part of Marcus's initial program had all found their own paths to success. Our job training programs have placed over 2,000 individuals in stable careers, Marcus continued. The Medical Outreach Initiative has provided care to tens of thousands. But numbers don't tell the whole story. He gestured to a group of doctors seated near the front, former homeless individuals who had received support to complete their medical education. True change comes from transforming lives, from believing in potential others might overlook. Diana stepped forward to join him at the podium. Their marriage had proved to be more than just a partnership. Together, they had expanded their initiatives across multiple cities, replicating the success of Memorial Hospital's programs nationwide. The Reed Foundation now operates in 12 cities, Diana announced. Each location follows the same principle, that worth isn't measured by current circumstances, but by character and determination. In a small diner 50 miles away, Jennifer Reed, now using her maiden name Walker, wiped down tables as the evening rush ended. 5 years of serving coffee and budget meals had stripped away her pretensions. Her once manicured hands were chapped from cleaning solution, her expensive highlights grown out to reveal natural gray. The diner's ancient television played local news coverage of the gala. Jennifer paused her cleaning to watch as the camera panned across familiar faces, her former friends and colleagues, all now orbiting Marcus's success rather than mocking it. That Marcus Reed, her manager commented, counting the day's receipts, started some program over at County Hospital last month. My nephew got into their medical technician training. Changed his life. Jennifer nodded silently. She had followed Marcus's expanding influence through news reports and overheard conversations. The Reed Foundation had become a model for community transformation, its success studied by universities and praised by politicians. Across the border in Mexico, in a small prison medical ward, Dr. Adrian Blake treated inmates with basic medical care. His extradition and subsequent trial had resulted in a 10-year sentence for medical fraud and ethics violations. His attempts to maintain his superior attitude had crumbled in the face of prison reality. Dr. Blake, a guard called out, "New patient in cell block C." Adrian looked up from his paperwork, his once immaculate appearance reduced to prison scrubs and institutional shoes. His prestigious medical license was long revoked, his practice limited to basic care under strict supervision. The latest issue of Medical Journal lay on his desk, featuring an article about the Reed Foundation's innovative approach to healthcare accessibility. The photo showed Marcus and Diana at the opening of another community medical center, surrounded by successful graduates of their program. Back at the gala, Tom Wilson approached Marcus during a quiet moment. The neighbor's once distinctive barking laugh had been replaced by a more subdued manner. "Marcus, I've been meaning to talk to you," Tom began. "About that night at Romano's. I've never properly apologized." Marcus studied the man who had once laughed at Jennifer's cruel jokes. "How's Sarah doing?" Tom's expression fell. "We divorced last year, after everything that happened. Well, she never really got past her part in it all. Started drinking, couldn't handle the guilt." Marcus nodded, understanding the ripple effects of that fateful dinner. The Foundation's counseling program might be helpful for her. Have her contact Maria Rodriguez. In another part of the city, the original Romano's restaurant had been transformed. Marcus had purchased it during the previous year, converting it into a high-end training facility for aspiring chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds. The table where Jennifer had mocked him now served as a teaching station where formerly homeless individuals learned culinary arts. The restaurant's new name, Second Chances, attracted attention from food critics and social commentators alike. Its graduation rate for formerly homeless trainees was over 90%, with many graduates going on to open their own successful establishments. Diana found Marcus later that evening, after the gala crowds had thinned. Thinking about that night, she asked, knowing how the annual event always brought back memories. "Remembering the beginning," he replied. "How different things might have been if Jennifer hadn't made that comment about homeless people having more worth than me." Diana smiled, understanding the irony. "She gave you the key to her own undoing." "Not just her undoing," Marcus corrected. "The key to helping thousands of people prove their worth." Their conversation was interrupted by Grace Martinez, the original shelter director, who now oversaw the Foundation's National Shelter Improvement Program. Marcus, the new numbers are in. The Seattle program is showing even better results than we projected. The Reed Foundation's model had proved remarkably successful in other cities. Each location followed the same principle, combining medical care, job training, and community integration. The program's graduates often became its strongest advocates, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of success. James Cooper joined them, tablet in hand. "You want to see this?" Adrian's appeal was denied. "He'll serve his full sentence." Marcus absorbed the news without visible reaction. Adrian's downfall had been thorough. His medical license revoked, his assets seized, his reputation destroyed. The man who had once mocked Marcus's lack of sophistication now served as a cautionary tale in medical ethics courses. His daughter started college last month, James added. The Foundation's scholarship program accepted her application. This drew a slight smile from Marcus. Breaking the cycle of cruelty meant helping even the children of those who had wronged him. Adrian's daughter had written a powerful essay about learning from her father's mistakes and wanting to practice medicine ethically. In her small apartment above a convenience store, Jennifer watched the late news coverage of the gala. The years had taught her hard lessons about true worth and false sophistication. Her nursing license, permanently revoked, hung on her wall as a reminder of pride's cost. The segment showed Marcus announcing a new initiative, a partnership with major hospitals nationwide to implement the Reed Foundation's community integration model. The camera caught him helping an elderly homeless woman up the stairs, the same genuine care he had shown from the beginning. Jennifer's phone buzzed, a text from her daughter, who was studying nursing at a community college. "Mom, the Reed Foundation is offering scholarships for medical training. Should I apply?" She stared at the message, understanding the complex implications. Her daughter had witnessed her downfall, had grown up watching her mother serve coffee to people who had once been her friends. The lesson hadn't been lost. "Yes," Jennifer typed back, "and tell them your full story. They believe in second chances." At the end of the gala, Marcus and Diana walked through the Reed Community Center's main hall. Photos lined the walls, success stories from their programs, before and after shots showing remarkable transformations. Not just physical changes, but the deeper transformation of people discovering their true worth. "The new center in Chicago opens next month," Diana reminded him. "They're already at capacity for program applications." Marcus nodded, pleased but not surprised. "How many former homeless individuals on the management team?" 60%, Diana answered. "All graduates of our original program here." They passed the building's cornerstone, which bore a simple inscription: "Worth is measured by character, not circumstances." The security desk was staffed by Robert Turner, the same homeless man Jennifer had mockingly compared to Marcus that night at Romano's. Now he managed the center's security team, having put himself through college with the Foundation's support. "Good evening, Mr. Reed, Mrs. Reed," Robert greeted them. "The new training class starts tomorrow. 25 students, all ready for their second chance." Outside, Marcus's Tesla waited in its usual spot. The same model he had driven years ago, maintained rather than replaced. A subtle reminder that true class didn't require constant displays of wealth. Diana checked her phone. "The documentary crew arrives next week. They want to tell the Foundation's story. Make sure they interview the graduates," Marcus replied. "Their stories matter more than mine." As they drove home, they passed the diner where Jennifer worked. She was visible through the window, cleaning tables just as she had done for the past 5 years. Marcus didn't slow down or acknowledge her. That chapter was long closed. The Reed Foundation's success had far surpassed any personal revenge. What started as a response to mockery had grown into a movement, transforming not just individual lives, but entire communities' understanding of worth and potential. In his home office, Marcus reviewed applications for the Foundation's next training class. Each story reflected the same truth he had learned from Jennifer's cruel comparison: that circumstances didn't define worth, and that success meant lifting others rather than pushing them down. The old videos from Romano's remained secured in his files, unwatched for years. They had served their purpose, not just in bringing justice, but in sparking a transformation that continued to ripple outward. Diana joined him in reviewing applications. "Look at this one," she said, highlighting a name, Sarah Wilson, Tom's ex-wife. Marcus read Sarah's application, a raw, honest account of her role in mocking him, her subsequent guilt and alcohol struggles, and her desire to make amends by helping others. Add her to the approved list, he decided. The counseling program first, then job training when she's ready. Their own marriage had strengthened over the years, built on shared values and purpose rather than social status. Diana's investigative skills now serve the foundation, vetting programs and ensuring resources reach those truly committed to change. The Reed Foundation's annual report sat on Marcus's desk, detailing lives transformed across the country. The numbers were impressive. Thousands of jobs created, medical care provided, homes secured. But the real success lay in the changed perspectives, the broken cycles of judgment and cruelty. Jennifer's cruel words at Romano's had indeed proved prophetic, though not in the way she intended. The homeless people she mockingly compared to Marcus had more than proved their worth, becoming successful professionals, business owners, and community leaders. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from James Cooper. Just interviewed a promising candidate for the medical program. You'll never guess, it's Jennifer's daughter. He showed the message to Diana, who understood its significance. The next generation breaking the cycle? Worth giving her a chance, Marcus replied. That's what we're all about, isn't it? The night settled around their home. Not a mansion, but a comfortable house filled with photos of foundation graduates and community celebrations. Success, Marcus had proved, wasn't measured in square footage or labels, but in lives transformed and potential realized. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that worth transcended circumstances. The Reed Foundation's work continued, not as revenge for past mockery, but as proof that true sophistication lay in helping others rise. The price of mockery had been paid in full, transformed into a legacy of positive change that would continue long after that fateful dinner at Romano's was forgotten. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.